Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy DELRAY Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time, ladies and gentlemen. The people have been going bonkers, ladies and gentlemen. They had fights breaking out outside the courthouse during the verdict. One of the things we come to find out just recently that the judge denied Diddy's bail. We're going to get into that. But ladies and gentlemen, I want you to hear something. And this, among other things, right? Tisa Tells just snapped, ladies and gentlemen. She just snapped. And I just need you to hear this and understand what I'm talking about. But before I get into it, let me see. Yeah, this is crazy. People have lost their minds, man. I can understand one wants somebody to be in jail and want somebody to suffer so bad, and when nothing's actually happened to them, from that perspective. I don't recall Diddy ever doing anything to Tisa Tales. It seems like she's personalized this, and everybody has a right to their opinion. By no means am I saying that one does not have a right to their opinion. But Tisa Tells has basically gone overboard, if you will. I need you to listen to this and understand what I'm about to tell you. So Tisa Tells was talking to some guy outside of the courthouse, and she said that Diddy is still not going to let you suck his private parts, if you will. But I need you to hear it for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. This is crazy. This, like I said, she comes across as this articulate young lady. But like I said, once again, it's a lot of hate. It's a lot of slander, disguised as this online reporting, ladies and gentlemen. I need y'all to listen to this. Check this out.
Channel, sweetie. What's that? Diddy is still not gonna let you suck his dick, baby.
Did y'all just hear that? Ladies and gentlemen, that's totally unnecessary. And that breeds a new kind of contempt for the situation. That doesn't help the victims. That doesn't benefit anybody. Like I said, Tisa Tales is out here masquerading as if she's some kind of a savior or representative to the people who are out here, or to the victim, should I say. And so when you understand what just happened and what she said, it's appalling, if you will. It's appalling. My thing is, your channel can be big as the channel can be big. Many views, many donations, all of those things. But like I said, once again, as I listened to her live, I was like, wow, she's even insulting the jurors. She's basically saying the jurors are stupid. That's why they picked the jurors. That's why they asked the questions that they asked, because they wanted the most uneducated, uninformed people who wouldn't know anything about anything, right? This is the thing that Tisa Tells is pushing. She just snapped. Like I said, once again, if you listen, you heard it. Rewind it back. Like I said, if you just watching this video, rewind it back and listen to what she said. Or better yet, let's do it again, ladies and gentlemen. I think this is very important that we understand what we're dealing with, right? This is what she said in regards to, and this is somebody who's supposed to be caring about the victims and all of these other things that she's pretending to do. And so with that being said, let me give it to you again, ladies and gentlemen. So the people that just coming into the room, this is Tisa Tells outside the courtroom talking to I think another YouTuber or somebody like that, and what she tells him about in regards to Diddy's private parts. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to listen to this. Check it out.
Channel, sweetie. What's that? let you suck his dick, baby.
Y'all heard it. So it's an all-out Diddy hate fest. Like I said, everyone has a right to their opinion. Anything that does not feed into what Tisa Tells thinks it should be as far as the narrative, she takes it personal and begins these personal insults. This is her style. This is her way. She basically snapped and lost it. You know, she was calling the guy these bitch ass niggas and all of these things, and it was like, oh wow, oh she got that in her. You know what I mean? Instead of being someone who can articulate and be able to explain, because like I said, everybody has a right to their opinion. But then she begins this assaulting, personal insults and slander. So the Punisher, after the verdict was done, the Punisher, one of the guys who was one of the male escorts, the Punisher actually went on television and basically expressed his opinion. I think his opinion is more valid than most people because he was actually involved with the case. He actually went in there and testified and was one of the people who was actually romantically involved with Cassie in dealing with the Diddy situation, right? So he goes and says that they asked him about, you know, what does he think about the verdict? And he says he thinks that the jury got it right. Ladies and gentlemen, do you know Tisa Tells says about the Punisher? You know, she said that, he just trying to get back in Diddy's good graces. He needs some more money from Diddy. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a totally speculative comment in regards to the guy who was actually involved. So what she's saying is, can't nobody else have any kind of, especially somebody who was personally involved, testified, and everything, you know, bore their soul out as to what happened and all. So this guy says his not just his opinion, but speaking his mind in regards to something that he was personally involved in. And Tisa Tells says because he does not speak in favor of what she thinks, basically goes on and says what? Oh, he just trying to get back in Diddy's camp and his good graces because he needs some more money from Diddy. Amazing. Amazing. Like I said, the slandering of jurors, calling them stupid, and all of these other things, just because it did not go the way that she was selling to her viewers on how it should go. Do you understand that? See, it's a difference. You know, you have your opinion and everything. But when you start slandering and disrespecting people, and so she's been getting this negative energy. Let me tell you straight up, I don't have any personal gripes with Tisa Tells. I'm reporting the facts. This is the facts. This is who she really is. And like I said, if it doesn't go her way, or if it's not agreeable according to what she thinks, then she does this thing. She also played an audio from I think one of the young ladies who may have be watching over Diddy's twin girls while he's incarcerated. And the young lady speaking once again from knowledge, right? From knowledge and firsthand information in regards to what she saw and she witnessed in regards to Jane Doe, Daphne Joy, if you will, and the fact that Diddy was still paying her bills. Tisa basically said that, because the young lady had said something in reference to how much chaos and confusion that Daphne Joy had caused up until the time that Diddy was arrested, right? And that that the kids, the daughters, the twin daughters, and the kids didn't want her around anymore. Now, she's telling this to another reporter. Tisa Tells then picks up the mic and then starts to play it, and then gives a comment about what the young lady said. She was like, "Oh yeah, she's defending Diddy, but not really concerned about Diddy beating the brakes off of Jane Doe." Right now, once again, this is the one-sided storytelling, because we know for the people who followed in court that Daphne Joy, aka Jane Doe, she admitted that she banged Diddy head up against the marble counter. She initiated the violence, right? So once again, when the violence is initiated, and I'm talking about any man, I don't think a man should put his hands on a woman or a woman should put their hands on the man, especially if you can't handle the repercussions. You know what I mean? There is no excuse, point blank, period. No, either way, there's no excuse for that, right? But when Tisa tells her rendition of it, it does not contain the full story. It contains half-truths. That is a problem. As I said once again, if you listen to what she said to the young man in regards to what was going on from that perspective, if you listen to that, you will see that it's more personal than it is anything. You understand what I'm saying? So now, the Punisher speaks up. She plays audio from one of the people that are the guardians over Diddy's kids, and still not telling the story. She's still not telling the truth. She's telling her own narratives, being disrespectful, just outright insulting people because they don't believe what she believes, right? This whole time during the trial, and she snapped, she's lost it. She, you know what I mean? She basically has lost it. And I'm just wondering, like, hold on, what's really going on? Like I said, we've seen her on Nancy Grace's show. We've seen her on various other networks and things like that. Once again, only speaking one narrative. And the people that support her, you can support her, whatever that is that you feel like you want to do because you want to support what Tisa's telling you. You know what I mean? But it ain't the truth. It's not the truth. It's just her opinion. And like I said, she has a right to her opinion. But what she doesn't have the right to do is to sit back and insult people and talk about how Diddy is not going to let this individual to his private parts in reference to something because she's having a disagreement with him, and you can see the disdain that she has for Diddy when she mentions his name in that manner, right? So, like I said, you see it. Tisa Tells has lost it. She has snapped. She snapped right on camera, right in the middle of, right in front of the courthouse. I was like, oh, wow. So this is who she is. And then, like I said, she goes on the call. She was like, these bitch ass niggas is out here trying to bully me and so on and so forth. So what that tells me is Tisa can tell it, but Tisa can't take it. Because, you know, evidently being confronted right then and there, and it didn't seem like the individual wanted to get violent or anything. He just wanted to express his point like she expresses hers. But it seems like when he expressed his, he was on the receiving end of something that was a little bit more disrespectful than it was to him than it was to her. He was just basically expressing his point. And she goes on to say, you know, Diddy's going to get 20 years and so on and so forth. And basically taunting the people that she thinks is not, taunting the people that she thinks is not agreeing to how she felt like the trial should go. Right? The most important, or should I say, the most important elements of the trial, or the charges in the trial, basically Diddy was acquitted of. Right? He was found guilty of the Mann Act. We understand that, right? So now, why does that sit so bad with Tisa that she has to be disrespectful to people outside of the courthouse? You got to ask yourself, it's not personal. It's not personal at all. This is somebody's life at stake. These are people who that were alleged to be victims. And like I said, the young lady who was on the phone, who had spoke on Jane Doe, basically said that when Jane Doe came around, she was down for everything that was going on at that particular time. You understand what I'm saying? The funny part is the victims that were claimed to be victims, right? On one end, were also participants, but they received immunity from whatever perspective that they received immunity. And so now we jump into the bail being denied. Now, the bail being denied, I totally understand. I guess, and so my question is this. Is he beyond redemption? And the question is Diddy beyond redemption? Because when they sold us this case through the media, they basically painted Diddy as this violent, we seen the Cassie tape, we seen all of that. And I keep on going back to the Jane Doe situation when she admitted that she was violent against Diddy. And nobody cared about that. It didn't resonate the same way as it did with the Cassie tape, right? So people have formulated these thoughts and feelings about what they feel, but once again, they're not equal. You can't sit here and say on one end, oh yeah, Diddy was wrong for hitting Cassie and blah, 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 but Jane Doe was right for hitting Diddy, banging his head up against a marble table because she was jealous, right? That was right. So now he had endured, listen, I'm not talking about anybody should feel any kind of way. He had endured violence from Jane Doe, Daphne Joy, based on Daphne Joy's own testimony and saying that she initiated the violence, right? So, but no, that's not the same thing. You see what I'm saying? See, this is the problem that we have in our justice system in America and how we see things. Like I said before, I don't think a man should put his hands on a woman and a woman shouldn't put his hands on a man. But unfortunately, we got people out here that think they can do that, right? And when the repercussions come, they're not ready for that. You see what I'm saying? You don't get it. You don't get to decide the outcome of what that was or what that is. And we've seen a number of people put their hands on people, right? And it did not end up the way that they thought it was going to end up when they put their hands on people. You see what I'm saying? So I don't think a man should put his hands on a woman or a woman should put his hands on a man. Point blank, period. But Tisa Tells basically snapped and she lost it today. She lost it. She invited someone to basically to Diddy's, and like I said, I was appalled. I was like, oh wow. You know what I mean? She comes across as this supposedly articulate person and, giving these facts and all of these things. But that's simply not the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, for the people just hit the chat, let me see, hit the like button. I want y'all to listen to this again for the people that just got here. Listen to Tisa tell this guy about what the title says. Listen.
Right now, okay? Worry about your little channel, sweetie. What's that? Diddy is still not gonna let you suck his dick, baby.
Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? What does Diddy's private parts have to do with any kind of conversation that she's having with somebody else? Simply this low gutter, beneath the belt, and like I said, this goes to show you that there's something deeper boiling in Tisa Tells than she's letting on. She's not really being honest about her true feelings about who she is and why she feels that way. I think she needs to open up to her viewers and talk about that. Because right then and there, that was very inappropriate. That was very disrespectful. And he didn't say anything in regards to that. He basically said, he said, I hope that Diddy sues you for slander. And then she said what she said in regard to Diddy allegedly won't invite that individual right there who Diddy probably never met to his private parts, if you will. You see what I'm saying? This, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, this is sickening, man. It's sickening. You know, and so, like I said, when we talk about the big picture as to what it is, you have people, like I said, people talking about their daughter, if you will, and about their own kids, and I totally understand that. I totally get that. Go ahead, Pop. Tell her. Go ahead. Huh? I don't have them, but because you live, I'm live, right? So yeah, like I said, once again, when you deal with the dynamics and the facts about what's going on, then yeah, it doesn't really bode well for what really just took place in regards to Tisa Tells. You say you got people, you got heart and soul. I can only know how far my daughter case would be if Tisa was here in South Carolina fighting on the behalf. Like I said, once again, a lot of people are expressing their personal feelings in regards to what they feel about Diddy. Diddy had nothing to do with their case. This has nothing to do with Diddy's case has nothing to do with what they're personally involved in. You can't use Diddy as a catalyst as to what their case is pertaining to, if you will. You can't do that. Like I said, once again, each individual has their own problems and what they do. But like I said, you heard it here. I needed to do this live, ladies and gentlemen, because I needed you guys to hear this, man. I needed you guys to understand what's really going on. This is not about a reporting. This is about slander. This is about coming up with their people's own notions. And if you don't agree with what they say or what they think, then they feel like, oh, you know, well, I could say anything that I want to you. I could disrespect you, and so on and so forth. You see Tisa, she snapped. She lost it. You know what I mean? You know, and it's like her disdain for Diddy is just off the Richter scale. Not only that, like I said, the Punisher came and talked about that he thought that the verdict was fair. When he said that, Tisa Tells goes on and she says, yeah, because he need money from Diddy. Like what? Totally speculative, totally out of the way, totally out of character. Like I said, I'm not shooting for what Tisa Tells is shooting for as far as getting people to look at what I'm saying or nothing like that, right? Because at the end of the day, when you speak truth and fact, that's just what that is. You don't have to worry about that. That you know, some people are gonna hate because they're gonna hate or whatever they're gonna say. But like I said, you're not engaging in any type of activity like that because that's not what this is about. But when you personally begin to impose your, or should I say, input your personal feelings into this situation, your opinion is one thing, but then your personal feelings, it's a whole nother thing because people who are actually involved, you know, the jury, she was like, the jury is so stupid. These are stupid people. These are like, what? Once again, if it doesn't go her way, she adds these insults to injury, if you will. Like I said, this is the reason why a lot of these YouTubers, they refrain from actually reporting like we were doing it from, you know, inner city press or the updates from Diddy's trial. Like I said, gavel to gavel coverage on what was actually going on. The reason why they wouldn't do that is because then they couldn't add their own little spice of life to it. You know what I mean? To get you to think that it was something that it wasn't. For all of these weeks, for these last 32 some odd days, you know, minus the weekends, right? Tisa Tells has been selling RICO. The prosecution has proved RICO. They proved RICO. Oh my God, they so had proved RICO. And after and like I said, you can see that she was adding her little personal flavor to it, right? When it didn't go how she thought it would go, she lost it. As you seen just not too long ago, how she lost it on that guy. How she lost it on the Punisher. How she lost it on the jury. She doesn't know these people. Those jurors are very intelligent people, but because they didn't vote the way that she was selling it on her channel, now they stupid. Now they dumb. Now they're uneducated. Now they're all of these other insults and things that Tisa Tells wants to come out and tell you. And like I said, people are saying, well, you know, Tisa, you're doing a great job. No, she not. No, she not. She might be pandering to their story or relating to something that they might feel that they can't express, or, you know, because they don't have a YouTube channel or platform. But that's not a good job. How is that helping anybody? You're insulting people that you don't even know, who took their time out to do a public service, and because they didn't agree with how she agreed with it, now they're stupid. Now they're dumb. Now they're uneducated. And she doesn't even know these people, so you know that it's speculative at best, or at worst. You understand what I'm saying? Now, the Punisher, he can't say nothing. The Punisher can't go on. Look, the Punisher, she gets on her channel 3 or 4 or 5 times a day, just talking crazy, right? So the Punisher, the guy who actually testified in court, the guy who actually laid down with Cassie in freak-offs, involved in situations, went on and they asked him, what did he think of the verdict? And he said he thought that the jury got it right. Tisa Tells lost her mind. He's saying that because he's trying to get back in Diddy good graces, and he want Diddy, he needs some more money from Diddy. What? The man wrote a book. The man released and revealed personal things about his life that he didn't have to reveal. And now all of a sudden, because he didn't speak to the narrative that Tisa Tells wanted him to speak to, now all of a sudden he trying to get back in Diddy good graces. Now all of a sudden he needs some money from Diddy. What? Where does that come from? That comes from somewhere deep inside of her, where she has disenchantment or things going on that we might not be privy to, ladies and gentlemen. Right? S.K. Simmons. Oh, yeah, like I said, once again, we understand what she does. She, as I speak right now, Tisa Tells is probably, and as S.K. Simmons said, thank you, S.K. Simmons, but Tisa Tells is over there on her channel slandering his name right now. We know that Diddy didn't get bail. So when she thought that he might get out, oh man, she lost it. Because he might get out this evening. Oh my gosh, this is such a miscarriage of justice and blah, blah, blah. Once again, it's cool to have your opinion. It's not a miscarriage of justice. It would have been, you know, she wanted to hit the home run, and she wanted the right after her name, ladies and gentlemen. She wanted people to say Tisa Tells was right, but she was wrong. And like I said, the 32 some odd days that she was over there selling all of that RICO, and how to, you know, I was in the courtroom, I was listening. Oh my God, you know what I mean? And it's like, what? Hold on, because we over here and we actually reporting, you know, gavel to gavel coverage on what we were talking about from Inner City Press, because they were actually in the courtroom, and we didn't see at least the people on my chat didn't see the need to get excited about nothing like that, because guess what? We understood what it was, and most of the people who knew and understood that and got the proper information already kind of knew where this would go. It wasn't that they were side or favoring Diddy. They were listening to the testimony, being the jury of public opinion, listening to what was being said, listening to what the prosecution laid out, listening to what the defense laid out, and the majority of the people who were listening really intently got it right. They was like, no RICO. You can go back and look at the videos and actually see for yourself when we were doing the lives. So, like I said, when she would come out and do all of these other things and say all of these other things during the break, it was like, you know, come in, shut the door. Let me tell y'all what happened, right? When the information that she was giving up, it wasn't really true. It was her feelings as to what she thought, or better yet, it was her bias as to what she thought and whose side she was really on. And it wasn't James. It wasn't Cassie's, right? It was none of them. She had her own personal opinion, and she was basically inputting her own personal opinion over the facts. And that simply does not work, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't work. So like I said, you can have 50,000 people there, and I think a lot of the people over there, they just like to look at her because she's animated and all of those things. I get that part, right? But the information being disseminated is not up to par. It's not up to par. Like I said, once again, now as to the bail being denied, my thing is this. And when I think about the bail being denied today, right? Let's be clear. So Diddy gonna have to walk his time to the door. He basically gonna have to do every day of his time before people feel a certain kind of way. Now, let me tell you what I think about this bail situation. Now, understand this. So when the case first started off, they said that Diddy was basically trying to manipulate or manipulate or tamper with the witness, right? And that was Mia. In fact, they proved in court that Diddy did not know that he was even being investigated, that there was a federal case going on. And like I said, when he called Mia on the phone, or wanted Mia to call him back, or no, Mia was talking to D-Rock. And when she talked to D-Rock, she said, I'm out of Skrilla, meaning she was out of money. So she wanted money from Diddy, right? She wanted money. Once again, the prosecution, in trying to point out the fact that Diddy was trying to tamper with Mia, never mentioned that. They never mentioned that she said that she was out of money. She said, I'm out of Skrilla, meaning money. That means that's like a street term for money, right? And so they never mentioned that. So once again, that was a deceptive move. They were trying to say tampering, but they didn't want, us, the public, to know that she was talking about, when on the phone, I'm out of money, when she was talking to D-Rock. Now, understand that. And then they said, well, he was trying to tamper with her. How? He didn't know that he was even under investigation. They would have to offer evidence to prove that he knew that he was under investigation to say witness tampering. Did he even know that she was even a witness in any kind of investigation? They didn't prove that. So how was it witness tampering? And this is to the bail situation. We know about the violence with Cassie. Like I said, Diddy was wrong for that shit. He should have never put his hands on that girl. He should have let her go. Like I said, if she was taking his bags or his Louis bag, that bag that he had and he picked up and so on and so forth, okay, get your bag. You ain't got to you can get it out of her hand, like I said, and let her go. You know what I mean? That's not what happened. He was wrong for that. Once again, his lawyers, during the closing argument, owned up to that. Like I said, he said, the domestic violence, we own up to it. If this was a domestic violence case, we would have pled guilty, period. It wouldn't even have been, we wouldn't be wasting the court's time, right? And so usually when the prosecution overcharges a defendant, right, and the judge knows this and they're saying all of these things, the judge really doesn't have time for all of that, and kind of like, well, you sold all of these things, you overcharged, you did all of this in hopes that you would get a conviction, in which they did not get. So now the judge usually would look at that and say, hey, you know what? You basically sold a bill of goods that you couldn't deliver. And so when in the Mann Act situation, there is no case law. Listen to me, ladies and gentlemen. And I think it was kind of crazy that the judge would ask the prosecution, is there any precedent or jurisprudence as to why Diddy shouldn't be let out on bail in the federal court? Any kind of precedent in the federal court? There is none, ladies and gentlemen. The person that was charged with the Mann Act was Jack Johnson, the boxer, right? Jack Johnson was given bail, but Jack Johnson skipped on his bail, right? And went to live overseas for a while, came back. Jack Johnson was recently, in the last couple of years, given a pardon, right? Given a pardon based on the fact of the Mann Act. So Diddy still stands a chance on getting a pardon from Donald Trump. He beat the most serious charges, not guilty. The Mann Act basically, if you riding in the car, let's put it this way. If you're riding in the car with a prostitute or somebody who's deemed to be a prostitute, and y'all go from, let's say, Maryland to Delaware, and you get pulled over, and this lady's a prostitute, known to be a prostitute, or whatever have you. you can face the Mann Act, ladies and gentlemen. You can face the Mann Act or whatever, however that wants to be. So when Jack Johnson faced that, it was not about that what he did in regards to that. It was that he was with a white woman. And he was a black boxer. And I think this was around 1914, 1916, the year, right? And so that's why they charged him. It wasn't so much that he was with somebody that was, or no, he was with that white woman, right? And so that's why Diddy, his team was so mad when they did that. So now, okay, everything else got acquitted of. They talked about the Mann Act. They convicted him of the Mann Act, right? Okay, cool. We understand the thing with Cassie. We've seen the video. But we also understand that Jane testified to being violent against Diddy. And that was the first time they had ever had any violent altercation ever, is when she hit him first, right? Okay, now, so that's two pieces of violence that we know about. One was inflicted upon Diddy, and he responded in kind. And the other one that was inflicted upon Cassie by Diddy, right? But she didn't respond in kind, right? Understand that. So there's violence in these personal, listen, ladies and gentlemen, in these personal long-term relationships. Sex trafficking wasn't there. None of these other things were there. So hold on. You go now for bail. And Cassie's lawyer, and Cassie, I think on Cassie's behalf, writes a letter and basically says that she doesn't feel like, he deserves bail for whatever reason, some type of statute or whatever in the Bail Reform Act from that perspective. Okay, cool. Get it. But now, Diddy was tried in court, found not guilty on the most serious charges, and found guilty of the Mann Act. Is there any point after, I think he'd been in the jail for 9 months. Is there any point, and I'm talking about, this is for any defendant. This ain't just for Diddy. Diddy just happened to be somebody who's high profile. Because 9 times out of 10, as you heard most of these lawyers talk about, if you heard them talk, you heard them talk about the fact that if this was a regular Joe, they would have been let out on bail. Right? Because it's Diddy, it seems as though they're they don't want him to get out. The prosecution mad that they lost their case. Now, if they won that case, man, you could best believe they would have been out front of the court doing the big ass press conference and all of these things. That did not happen. I don't even think Diddy's team went out and basically celebrated because it still wasn't a full victory from the perspective that they probably thought that they should have gotten one. Like I said, you had a lot of people yesterday talking about, because the jury came out with the partial verdict, talking about how the first 4 counts guilty. They didn't know. They didn't see any kind of paperwork. They were guessing. And as we seen today, we saw what happened. Most of them, not all of them, were wrong. Like I said, I reserved my opinion or what I thought. I'm like, I don't know. I said, I don't really feel like it would be guilty because they couldn't get the RICO, right? So if you couldn't get the RICO, then you don't really, all of these other things, most of them are attached to the RICO. The sex trafficking was attached basically to the RICO when you looked at the verdict sheet, if you will. And I did a video on that. So now, when Diddy gets denied bail, I was like, oh, wow. But I kind of had a feeling that they wouldn't. Because I was like, they don't want him out. They just don't want him out. It ain't got nothing to do. And like I said, basically, the 55-year-old has spent nearly 10 months in jail, including during his 2-month trial. On July 2nd, hours after Combs and his lawyers celebrated being cleared of the top criminal charges, he faced U.S. District Court Judge Aaron Subramanian denied bail for Combs, issuing an order to keep him incarcerated at the Metropolitan Detention Center until his sentencing, right? And this was the judge's statement. And I want you to understand the statement. When you understand the full aspect of his statement, then you're going to get it, right? When you understand, you have to understand what he's saying. And you could never, this is something that you never could prove, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care who you are. You could never prove this. You ready? Check this out. Listen to this. This was the judge's statement. It is impossible. Listen, it is impossible for the defendant to demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence that he poses no danger. I had to pause for that one. Because think about what was just said. It is impossible for the defendant to demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence that he poses no danger. So will he ever be able to? Will he be able? Will Diddy be ever? Will Diddy be ever able to demonstrate with clear and convincing evidence that he poses no danger, or is it what the judges feels? Because there's no evidence that he would pose a danger. As of now, he's been locked up for 10 months. They charged him. They didn't win. Okay, can we get a reset now? They got me on the Mann Act. Okay, cool. Engaging in prostitution or, taking somebody, my girlfriend, we traveled from Miami to LA and we had a freak off. That's basically what that is, right? But she was my girlfriend. Okay, that's the Mann Act. All right, cool. This wasn't like he was a true guerrilla pimp out here pimping, and he was, he was coast to coasting and international and with the thing and really doing. This wasn't that. So when you think about what in the statement, I'm just going by the facts. These are the facts. It is impossible for the defendant to demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence that he poses no danger. Think about what that says, and you can take that and you can break that down into any form that you want to. So that's like somebody telling you after you did something wrong, right? They're basically saying that, there's no way that you can demonstrate to me that, that you won't, drive the car recklessly again. So I'm going to take your license away. So what can the person that you said that you want them, what can they demonstrate to you that they can do to show you that they won't drive reckless again? The only way that they'll be able to show you that, right, is that you let them get behind the wheel. Whether you give them certain kinds of restrictions behind the wheel to see if they would go by what you wanted them to do or not. But if you never let them out, then they could never demonstrate that, correct? So that let me know it wasn't even about the statement that he made. It was just about he just didn't want to let him out. Point blank, period. That's how I looked at that. So when you understand that from what that is, I get it. Okay, cool. You don't want to let him out. You know what I mean? And then you have people talking about, oh, he's going to do 20 years. Oh, he's going to do. We don't know that either. The judge can come back and be like, you know what, Mr. Combs, you've dealt with everything that I've said. You know what I mean? I'm going to give you time served and, 5 years probation. From that perspective, right? Ladies and gentlemen, let me explain something to you. They have prostitution stings and things. You can go on YouTube and look at videos. They have prostitution stings and stuff like that all the time, right? You have women that get locked up for prostituting, right? That does not face this kind of scrutiny, ladies and gentlemen, right? Diddy has never been charged. I'm talking about, when I talk about Diddy, I'm talking about every John Doe and so on and so forth. We seen the video. They wanted us to see the Cassie video, y'all. They was hoping that video tainted the jury. It didn't work. It didn't work. Diddy's lawyers made compelling arguments as to, hey, we accept that. I said to myself, like I said, and I said to you guys, he deserved to be locked up for that situation right there, point blank, period. And it's sad. And it's real sad that, okay, cool. What they want to happen to me, it didn't happen. Okay, can we get a reset? Can we get a reset? Okay, can I get out on bail now? No, because, it's impossible for the defendant to demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence that he poses no danger. But the only way he'd be able to do that is if you let him out and gave him a shot at going back to his family to be able to do that, because I believe that no one, absolutely positively no one, is beyond redemption, ladies and gentlemen. I know people that have killed people that did years, 7 years, for whatever reason, was self-defense, whatever. And they came back out and they're model citizens. I know people who used to be drug kingpins. And the stigma that they had put on that at one time, like I told you before, they were trying to get Diddy with drug distribution. It didn't work. He wasn't distributing drugs. Why would you even, like I said, once again, they were throwing things at the wall to see what could stick. And it just didn't stick. And like I said, you go back into Tisa Tells and it's like, okay, cool. When does a person get to redeem themselves beyond somebody's personal feelings or public hate? Because I know that if the judge had any kind of shortcoming, he made a mistake, he would want another chance. He would want another, to be able to show that, hey, you know what? I can be an upstanding citizen. You know what I mean? And for what they charged me for, going in my bedroom, mentioning all of these things, bringing in all of these people, right? The embarrassment of that wasn't enough. We need you to stay locked up. We need you to be, hear what this is. And like I said, I respect the judge's opinion. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I don't think that nobody is beyond redemption, man. You have got people who've been locked up, like I said, even in a situation involving, when people are wrongfully accused, right? And then they do 20 years or 23 years in prison. All of a sudden, the DNA, test, because they didn't have DNA back then like they do now. The DNA test comes back and it shows that the person that they locked up for 20 years based on some false testimony, and because they had an all-white jury or whatever it was, or wherever they was, a whole bunch of things that just clouded the case. Dude did 23 years in prison, and the DNA comes back not to match him. You don't even see, like I said, you don't even see them apologize to him and that man and say, hey, that I'm sorry and blah, blah, blah. You even actually have them passing state laws and where they're saying that if you are wrongfully convicted and you prove to be not guilty, you can't get no compensation. Right? What was that? The 7, the 5, the Central Park 5. Those brothers, they got compensated. But like I said, once again, when that situation happened, you had people taking out ads in papers and doing all of these other things, only to come and talking about they should be hung and all of these other things, only to come to find out that they didn't even do it. And you didn't even hear an apology, ladies and gentlemen. That's the hate. That's the disdain. This is America. This is America. So when you think about the big picture and you look at Diddy from that perspective, right? Once again, you go back to Tisa Tells coming out with all of this slander and craziness, right? And basically saying, oh, the prosecution, they have proved RICO. They proved RICO. No, they didn't. Right? She was basically selling something that hadn't even been on sale. Ladies and gentlemen, Tisa Tells is selling something that's not even on sale. It ain't even in the store. It hasn't even been manufactured yet, ladies and gentlemen. It's a shiny little object. We got to get close enough so that we can see it, but we can't see it because it has not been manufactured yet. Because guess when it was manufactured, ladies and gentlemen? At approximately 10 o'clock this morning. When the jury came back with the product that they had manufactured based on the evidence and the situation that they had to deal with. And they came back and they voted what? Not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, guilty, guilty. On the lessers. And Tisa Tells snapped. Because she had been selling the people that watch her channel a bill of goods that did not get delivered. And you know what the people who on her channel should tell her? I want my money back. Because it didn't go out like you said it was going to go out. You know what I mean? That what she was advertising to happen and saying that was proven did not get proven. And we can say that from our perspective in dealing with this situation over here on Straight Game. We could say that. The reason why we could say that? Because we weren't doing no speculation. We were simply watching it, looking at what happened, looking at the court, reading what was being testified to, right? And going by the facts. There was no need to throw any kind of other spice on it, because if it didn't come to fruition, now you lose those people who you once were telling. So now anything that Tisa Tells comes out and says, I don't believe none of it. When this situation first started, right? When it first started, she was over there on her channel. She was talking about all of this, and Diddy did this, and Diddy did that, and the boy that got shot, and all of it. And ooh, I just heard something through the grapevine. She ain't heard nothing through no grapevine. They didn't even grow grapes at that time of the year. She didn't hear nothing through no grapevine, ladies and gentlemen. The grapes be growing in summertime. You see what I'm saying? She didn't hear nothing. It was just, she was conjuring up these stories. I mean, like, I heard, no, you didn't. No. Because it didn't turn out to be what she said it was, even in that situation, and that put me up on game. I was like, oh, she over there just saying anything. I'm like, oh, wow, this is what they do on YouTube? Like I said, it was no different than Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. for the people who know about that, and all of the things that he had been saying about Suge Knight and Tupac. And come to find out, none of it was true. And people don't even really listen to that garbage anymore based on that fact. Like I said, once again. But, I gave y'all what happened. I gave y'all what she said. Right? And like I said, for the people, let's do it like this. For the people who just came in, ladies and gentlemen, I need you to, I'm gonna play it one more time, because I got to play it one more time, because like I said, I was like, oh wow, because I'm thinking that, we're dealing with somebody who's very civil-minded, right? And it was like, she snapped, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, she snapped and talked about Diddy's private parts and how the guy wasn't gonna be invited to Diddy's private parts and all of that. Ladies and gentlemen, listen.
Hey, worry about your little channel, sweetie. What's that? Diddy is still not gonna let you suck his dick, baby.
Did y'all hear that, man? She said that Sean P. Diddy Combs is not gonna let this individual that she was talking to outside the court invite him to his private parts. Based just on and like I said, she's that triggered. She's that triggered behind this. And like I said, we don't know the underlying trauma that she may have been going through or whatever it is. But like I said, hopefully she can come and be a little bit more candid or have a little bit more candor. You know what I mean? And even as far as the jury, when the jury got dismissed, once again, that was a whole nother thing in which she wasn't being honest about. It was like, oh, the juror lied. The juror didn't really lie. The guy said that he had a New York ID. He said he lived in and sometimes he stay in New Jersey, right? They rode with that one, hoping that if they got the black juror removed, that by some way, stretch of the imagination, that it would get them what they wanted. It didn't get them what they wanted. Maybe if they let the black juror stay on, they might have got the guilty verdict that they wanted, ladies and gentlemen. They might would have gotten that, ladies and gentlemen. But like I said, at the end of the day, now, here we are. Diddy denied bail. Like I said, once again, and then, the judge, even in that situation, the judge, as he explained his decision, submarine reference to the anonymous, listen, I want y'all to listen to this. This is one of the reasons why he said he denied bail. Listen, as he explained, and then he related to Jane, the one who, basically assaulted Diddy. Listen, as he explained his decision, Submarinian referenced the anonymous ex-girlfriend Jane's testimony that Combs choked and dragged her during an argument in June 2024, when Combs was aware of the active federal investigation into his conduct, right? Ladies and gentlemen, they never proved, from what I understood, and he said when he was aware of that during the June 2024, I think they locked Diddy up in September. Like I said, I don't know when he was aware. As far as what they presented in court, they basically said that he wasn't aware. When Combs was aware of the active federal investigation, into his conduct. He also noted that Combs' team admitted it. We own the domestic violence in regards to the Cassie's Ventura Fines allegations of long-term abuse, right? Now, I don't know if they said long-term abuse, but I do know that they owned it in the court, right? So, and listen to me. They didn't say long. Let's be clear. They didn't say long-term abuse. They didn't. That was what they've been reporting. They said we own the domestic violence is what they said. They said we own the domestic violence. They did not say anything about long-term, ladies and gentlemen. This is how you get manipulated. You see what I'm saying? And so that was one of the reasons why he said, but listen, the judge never focused on the fact, and this is the part, that's what I'm saying. You see what I'm saying? The judge never focused on the fact that the reason why Diddy had the situation with Jane in the first place was because Jane banged his head up against the marble counter first. Because she was mad and jealous about Gina or Young Miami or one of his other girlfriends, ladies and gentlemen. You get it? That doesn't excuse Diddy of doing what he did to her, not one bit. Like I said, I don't think that any man should put his hands on any woman, and any woman should put his hands on any man. If you hate Diddy because you hate Diddy, then that's what you do. I don't hate Diddy. I don't love Diddy. It doesn't matter to me. We're talking about the facts as we saw them in the court, dealing with the case and looking at the everyday for the last 32 some odd days and what came out. And this is why, like I said, he explained that the testimony from Jane, right? But once again, he explained that testimony, but not the fact that Jane had initiated the violence to begin with. But God is watching, man. God is watching. And you better hope that none of these people ever, because like I said, you know, things have a way of coming up, man. They have a way of coming up. And like I said, the same people who cast judgment, right? Judgment shall be cast. So, you know, once again, just remember I said that right here, right now, right? And basically they talked about how long Diddy could be in jail. You know, like I said, and the crazy part about this is how early Combs was found guilty on 2 counts of transportation of his then girlfriends, Jane and Ventura, as well as sex workers to engage in prostitution, right? So when the Punisher said that he felt like that the jury got it right, they didn't, and that was another thing. Think about it. I want you to understand this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you, because a lot of people are not paying attention to this. So Cassie and Jane were sex trafficked, but the Daniel Phillips and the Punisher, they weren't sex trafficked. That wasn't even a part of the case. Think about that for a minute. They were the people, they flew from New York to wherever they were told to fly from, and all of those things, right? Mind you, most of the people that they talked about that were flying, none of them testified. You had 2 people, the Punisher and Daniel Phillips, that testified. But when it came down as to the verdict, none of them were on the what's name. So did the male sex workers get sex trafficked too? Or was it just Diddy's girlfriends? According to the documentation in the verdict sheet, it was only Diddy's girlfriends. But the male sex workers were the ones really being paid. If you want to say trafficked, right? Or did they work for a service? Was the service that they worked for investigated? Was the company that they worked for investigated? Because they were engaging in what? According to what they explained in court, prostitution. Male prostitutes, right? But that wasn't a part of the case. Just like I'm telling you about the violence that was inflicted upon Diddy, like the violence that was inflicted upon Cassie. You see it? And so when we talk about equality, we want equal rights. I just want it to be equal. I don't care who get the rights. It don't matter to me. You know what I mean? But like I said, no man should put his hand on a woman, and no woman should put his hand on a man. Point blank, period. But we ain't dealing with people who think like that. We dealing with people who I feel like, right? And like I tell them, you have a right to your feelings, but your feelings don't make you right. But that's not the world we live in, ladies and gentlemen. We have this skewed vision of reality and what that means, and we're going to apply this to this group of people, but we're not going to apply the same thing to this group of people. That's like I told y'all about, the mandatory minimum sentence when it came to crack versus powder cocaine. They was locking black people up, giving them, you had 3 rocks, 3 grams, they would give you 10 years. You could have a whole half a kilo of powder cocaine, and they'd be like, you know what, he gets the drug diversion program. He was only, these were for his constituents. This was nothing harmful, right? When it takes actual powder cocaine to make crack, you would think that the person who had to have a kilo of powder or the ounce of powder cocaine, what's that? Paul Brennan, what is his name? Brandon Paul, right? When he got locked up at the airport, what did he say? What was the first thing he said? He said what? This belongs to me. He said, this belongs to me, right? But when he got to the court, what did he say? He said that this belongs, no, I got this for Sean Combs. What? That ain't what you told the people when you got locked up. You told them that it was yours. But then he came to court and he changed his story. But then they asked him. They asked Brandon Paul what they asked him. They said, you wouldn't work for a criminal, would you? You wouldn't work for a criminal. He said, no, I wouldn't. That wasn't what the prosecution wanted to hear. So much so on redirect, they asked him what? You said you wouldn't work for a criminal, but you bought drugs for Sean Combs, correct? Is that not criminal activity? Now, ladies and gentlemen, it was so funny because it's like he bought drugs. No matter who he bought the drugs for, what he had committed was a criminal act in him purchasing the drugs. Right? So how is it that you now attribute this to Sean Combs when Brandon Paul said that he got high too? He was using drugs too. And the cold part about the game, listen, this is how cold the game is. Brandon Paul, I just told you, got caught with 27 grams of powder at that airport. Right? His charges were dismissed, ladies and gentlemen. And he said that he went to a drug diversion program, just like I told you. This ain't no myth. I'm giving you the facts. This is what he testified to in court. He said, yeah, I got a drug diversion program, and the charges were dismissed. Ladies and gentlemen, do you know for the same charges that Brandon Paul was dismissed for, that they were trying to catch Diddy up in a RICO case? I don't think you understand what I just said. For the same charge that was dismissed and Brandon Paul went to a drug diversion program, they were trying to get Diddy caught up in, it was on the verdict sheet, they were trying to get Diddy caught up in drug distribution and made one of those the predicates for the RICO, ladies and gentlemen. So Brandon Paul he can get his slate wiped clean when he committed the crime and said that it was his dough. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. That's what he told the arresting officers. It's my drugs. But then went to court, got up on the stand and said, no, they were Diddy's drugs. I bought it for him. Amazing. And like I said, once again, these are all of the facts that came out in the trial for the people that were watching when we were watching, right? We didn't have no reason to exaggerate and give you some other kind of ulterior statement or statement of facts. It was right there on the screen, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody in the chat know what I'm talking about, right? You know what I mean? Everybody in the chat know what I'm talking about. Even some of the people that came in the chat and they was trying to clown, it was right there on the screen, whether you liked it or you didn't like it. We didn't care about that. Right. And so then now all of a sudden, After the jury got dismissed, after three motions for mistrial, after all of these things that happened that went in favor of the prosecution, at the end of the day, they still didn't get the conviction that they wanted on the charges that the most serious charges. And now all of a sudden, the same thing that they argued before in regards to Sean P. Diddy Combs, they're arguing now. And like I told you before, I don't know how one works past this, but the statement by the judge says, and like I said, I don't know how you ever get past this. Like I said, this is just, somebody that just don't want to let you out. I mean, you can cut it, whatever. And to use the situation with Jane, when Jane was the one who inflicted the violence on Diddy in that one instance that they had an altercation. I could see we say, but use the Cassie situation, but that was a one-off that we saw. We don't know about anything else. We heard about other situations and instances, right? And I believe those. Like I said, I don't believe that Cassie would lie and when she had other bruises and things like that. I don't think that was, but I think the whole relationship was volatile. I think on both ends, the whole relationship was volatile. Remember, Breonna Bongolin said that Cassie threw a knife at Diddy when he came over to her place. Remember? So it was all of those things, but those things weren't taken in consideration. The totality of it. So, if you want to lean one way, you lean one way. But like I said, I still think that Donald Trump gonna pardon Diddy, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, he gonna pardon. Because when he gonna look at it, Donald Trump gonna look at it and be like, you know what? He beat the RICO. Right? He stood tall. His Christina Karam, she stood tall. You know what I mean? She wasn't arrested. Why? Because she would have said that everything that I did was my job. She never bought drugs. She never paid anybody doing the freak offs. So they really didn't have anything on her. They just wanted her phone to confiscate her phone because of text messages in which they read in court. So Christina Karam, she stood 10 toes down and 2 feet deep. Right? And Mark Agnafalo basically said that everybody needs a Christina Karam. If you just handling business, somebody, a confidant, somebody that you can trust and know that if anything go down, she gonna stick by you and ride with you. You know what I mean? Until the wheels fall off. That's very hard to find, ladies and gentlemen. That's why so I agree with that. It's very hard to find people like that. You have people that you've been knowing for your whole life. Something happened, man, they shake on you in a minute. And so, once again, when you understand the facts that go into what happened today, and, the Tisa Tells snapping and, saying Diddy's still not going to let you, invite you to his private parts and all of this, all of this slander and calling the jury stupid and they dumb and they uneducated and all of these things that Tisa Tells, all of these insults and things that she has been throwing out there at people. Talking about the Punisher when he said, he thought that the jury got it right. Then she goes in on him talking about, yeah, he's trying to get back in Diddy's good graces. He still needs some more Diddy's money. Like, what does that got to do with what they asked that man a question and saying that he thought that they got it right? The Punisher even actually apologized to Cassie, and said that he was sorry. You know what I mean? Because now looking at it in hindsight for all the things that he didn't know about at that particular time, right? That he was sorry. And so I take that not as something that he's saying to try to clout chase or anything like that. I take that as something that he's saying from his heart. I'm sorry, because he didn't know. You know what I mean? Let's give some shout outs, man. Ravens fan 22, Queen for Life, Sharon Northington, Anthony G, Alejandro, YouTuber, Queenie, the Virgo, Winter, who else? Kathy Rose, what's good? Bishop Bond, J Mac, Tanya V, American Isness, L Jackson, 52, who else? Alan Wells, Miss Coffee, Queenie, the Virgo, Benjamin Moss, and everybody else that are not inside of the chat. Like I said, I appreciate you guys, and I needed to bring you this, ladies and gentlemen, because I think this should be talked about. You know what I mean? We not tripping on all of the other stuff that they trying to bring our way, and you know, talking about, oh, you know, and Tisa Tells was talking about, like, oh, your little channel and this, that, and the other. It's all good. We all start from somewhere. You know what I mean? And like I said, you know, I do a lot of other things than just this YouTube. Like I say, so, you know, sometimes what you don't see is what you get into. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. But once again, if, you know, her thing is, I think that's all she riding on. So if that's all you riding on, right, then you got to do the things that she's doing in order to keep it afloat, if you will, from that perspective. And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thank you for tuning in. And you guys have a blessed day. Your boy DELRAY, straight gang.
They said Tupac was untouchable, but behind the walls of Rikers Island, he was just a man, wounded, watching his back, and wondering who he could trust. He survived bullets, betrayal, and isolation behind bars. But what happened inside those walls has never been told until now. In the darkest corner of Rikers, he found betrayal and a brotherhood no one saw coming. These dudes smiled in my face, then flipped and tried to kill me, and I never saw it coming. They were Puff's security, Biggie's muscle, Henchman's people, and Tupac knew exactly who sent them. This is the side of Tupac Shakur the world never got to see, told by the man who lived it with him, not in the studio, but in a 6x9 cell. The rap battles, sex and drama with female guards, the tears, the silence after Jada Pinkett's visit, and the moment Tupac almost broke. Before Death Row, before All Eyes on Me, before Machiavelli, there was Rikers. Behind the Walls with Tupac Shakur, available now on Amazon. Get your copy. Learn the truth.
Life is like some cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother